pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In my time as my time as mayor, I have seen a lot. I have watched Susan Sullivan go from someone who loved her job and looked forward to the future progress, into someone who ultimately quit because of harassment, abuse, and retaliation that was hurled at her. From the very first threat to terminate her without cause, to her being besmirched in an open meeting about crooked prints and frames that she didn't even do the framing in, so much skill and knowledge was driven out of the village. I've also watched false accusations get leveled against other employees. That letter from the lawyer, the letter from the lawyer was received because.
Jen, are you calling the meeting to order?
Oh yeah, I already did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pledge of allegiance.
Okay, sorry.
That letter from the lawyer was received because members of the board went around my back to try to fire Susan Sullivan. When they realized they could not fire her for cause, they tried to fabricate cause. Much like how Brian's sister-in-law was apparently brought in to badmouth Harry, they got in another employee's case and got her to quit, conducting an exit interview, pinning it all on Susan in order to generate cause, which did not work. So failing to do that, they refused to replace the individual, forcing Susan to do that job in addition to both the administrators and clerk's jobs, all at the same time, loading her up with more and more reports, so driving her to eventually quit because she didn't want to screw anything up. Not to mention the stress of being under all that pressure, and apparently her tires got slashed twice. I've watched Benny and Dale cover for Brian's behavior, and they also retaliated against the person who filed the complaint. This is not the only act of retaliation I've witnessed. I've reported it to several state agencies, including the Human Rights Division, only to be told that since it's a politician, the people elect them and who's near to say otherwise. If I am lucky, I am told they might get back to me, but they never did.
Excuse me, Mayor? Don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, you're interrupted. Yeah, you're interrupted, sorry.
We can't hear him.
I just want to ask him if he could just slow down so we can hear you. I can't
Okay.
hear him. Sorry.
Okay. Due to the attitude of everyone I reported this to, I decided, with Susan's permission, to release the 2 letters to the public to inform the public of what is going on. This was a measure of absolute last resort, as I could not get the state to act, and the public has a right to know what is going on behind closed doors, driving competent and qualified people out of the village. With this, Tracy Graves, Jeremy Gay, and Cody O'Brien have also come out and told their own stories of abuse and harassment by the individual, and this tells me that this is a long-running pattern of behavior that has been covered up and excused by many people over the years. I call on Brian Pelkey to resign for his long-standing abusive behavior. I also call on Benny and Dale to resign for participating in the cover-up and retaliation against Susan Sullivan because she dared to report what was happening. Opening meeting to the public. First person to speak is Ron Langwitz.
Yeah.
Please stand up.
Ron Langlois, 71 Champlain Street. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Harry for giving up his seat for me. I wasn't aware because of COVID. I had to sign up. Okay. And also, we had a couple of power outages this past weekend, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, especially on my street. And I want to give a thank you to Jason Juno and I don't know his first name, Mr. LaValle, for a quick response. An hour and a half after I called, we had power.
Jared
They
LaValle.
did a good job.
First name is Jared LaValle.
Yeah, okay. The other thing, this kind of directed at Harry over here. I'm sure none of us in the village are anti-business, okay? We want business. But my feeling is, when ERS came in here, and especially the server company, I don't know their name, they lied to us, okay? From what I know is they were supposed to manufacture servers, test them, and sell them. I might be mistaken, but that's the impression I got. And now they're using them 24/7. And there's, from what I know, they're selling all that data to Amazon, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. Am I correct in that?
I do not know what they're doing.
Pardon me?
I do not personally know what they're
Well,
doing.
I'm sure they're sending it somewhere, right? So, you know, I think they lied to us, okay? And they're doing not what they were supposed to do. So that's my opinion. From what I know, I might be wrong, but nobody has said otherwise. It seems like everybody knows they're running servers 24/7. Like I said, we're not anti-business here. And to me, that should be settled. I don't know, whatever, somehow get to the bottom of it. And the other thing is when they did all the demolitions last year, we have a school within 100 yards from those buildings. Was DEC ever called? Was the health department ever called? For, you know, asbestos? Those buildings were old. I'm sure there was lead paint in there, asbestos and all that stuff. Were they informed? As far as I know, no.
I
Right?
do not know the answer to that
Okay, so
question.
they went and demolished all them buildings without the okay because of contaminations in there. You know darn well there was contaminations in there. You know, and because we all know, because there's supposedly toxic chemicals in the ground, that's why homes in the area are being tested periodically, right? So what I'm saying, you know, we have the north prevailing winds here, and that's in the schools south of that property. So basically, what they're doing there didn't set well for a lot of people, okay? Didn't set well with me. It seems like nobody did the proper things. Permits, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if their permits were applied or whatever.
Conveniently, the people that did the demolition are actually here today.
What's that?
The people that conducted and ran the demolition are here today.
All right. Well, I don't know. I never seen any tests done on there, whatever, for all that stuff. But anyway, and this is kind of directed at Harry over here. I'm not against solar power at all. I am not. Okay. And I'm sure a lot of people aren't either. But as long as they're, because I feel we were lied to by the ERS and that company that's working there. You know, I just hope he's doing the right thing by telling us what he's gonna do and do the right thing. You know, we're not a bunch of ignorant hillbillies up here, you know? We want what's best for our village and the taxpayers, okay? But I feel if we're lied to and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, well, that doesn't set well with a lot of us, you know? So, and, what else did I get here?
25 seconds.
I know you have a lot of other issues to settle. I'm sure a lot of them are legal matters. But I feel a lot of that should be settled in executive session with attorneys, whatever. I don't feel that should be, you know, accusations here and there, whether it's against board members or past employees. I don't feel, you know, we have other issues to take care of besides accusations all over the place until it's settled in the court of law or whatever, or by attorneys, okay? So I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay. I'll let you go a little bit over your 5 minutes.
Pardon me?
I'll let you go a little bit over your 5 minutes so you can finish.
I'm sorry, I have a hard time.
I'll let you go over your 5 minutes by about 30 seconds so you can finish.
Okay.
Becky Reed?
Becky Reed, 50 Rose Avenue. I just have a couple questions. The former Pfizer property, are there currently property tax breaks given to that property for new businesses coming in?
Yes, Putnam County gave them an industrial development property tax break.
For how long?
Dave? I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm not sure off the top of my head yet.
Okay.
15 years.
15 years about.
So, I was watching the December 15th meeting with the Power Authority, and there was a couple of recurring questions that he was coming back to that he had to consult with his attorneys on. And it was about the separate contract for excessive use of power and asking for additional power allotted if we go over our allotment. Were those questions answered?
I have not been informed if they've been answered or not yet.
As serving as a past trustee, that over allotment of power used to be based on the amount of jobs coming into the area. And it had to be a pretty large amount of jobs that were coming in, because I know that Pfizer was at one point looking to increase power allotment. And we were not going to be able to meet the job availability for that extra allotment. So I'm just wondering if anybody has looked into that extra increment of power being allotted to us, if that is dependent on a certain amount of jobs, or if it's just as long as we're providing jobs.
I have actually already followed up on that before previously because I wanted to know what the trigger would be. I'm told it was about 50 employees, which I found to be rather low, but I haven't been given concrete guidance on that matter, which is much to my disappointment, to be honest.
Okay, and then the load capacity coming into the village. I know that currently we can handle what we need for our transformers in town. Harry's willing to buy another transformer. Have we had the load capacity coming in from New York Power Authority tested yet to make sure it can handle the excessive load?
That has not been tested yet, but we have had a large user in the past. I went back and gathered 11 years of budget data. In 2009, the industrial use of the electrical was $3,069,103.
Okay, so revenue doesn't make a difference in how much power we can pull through that transmission line?
It tells you a lot because currently the industrial use is only 150,000.
Becky, that was about 22 megawatts. There's a high peak that the village hit when Pfizer used to use half the power. So we hit a 22 megawatt load.
Okay.
And
So
I have a
the-
report that I'm going to give when it comes to me, and it's going to explain a lot of the hydro allocations and everything, the direction that we're headed in.
Okay,
I think it'll answer a lot of your questions.
great, thank you. And then just one last question. Harry, I noticed during that meeting, you were talking about the greenhouses and solar panels, and you had mentioned that your greenhouses aren't making you any money, and you were going to use the solar panels to help provide power into those greenhouses. Are you pulling in your revenue off the solar panels? I just don't understand what your business model is for making money on the greenhouses. That wasn't clear to me.
Sure, I'm happy to answer it from here. Most greenhouses don't, at the moment, don't make enough revenue because they have a high cost base from utilities. So your heat, to generate the heat, and the cost of the power for the heat, right? The reason this situation is ideal is you've got heat coming out of the building, and you've got the ability to put up solar right on site that will supply the power to the greenhouses. You can do on-site generation, right?
Yep.
The on-site generation helps a lot because then you cut down on your demand charges that you have to pay the grid and everybody else. But you will still consume from the grid maybe a little amount, but you're generating enough power on site. That helps with the economics and makes the project more viable than if you just went out in the middle of nowhere and just set up a greenhouse and you have to put all the infrastructure in. It becomes harder, right? So the greenhouse market is going to grow in the next, I would say, 3 to 5 years, and I think it's already reached the point where it is going to work because all of our food prices have gone up. I don't know what your lettuce prices have gone up, your food prices are all going up now anyway. So as a result, these are going to become more viable now than you've ever had in the past because of transportation costs and all the other stuff. So I think the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see a lot of this across the country, and I think it's getting to that point where it's viable now. But all we were trying to do is to make it more sustainable by recirculating what is already available, so we didn't have to go recreate it. And that was the plan.
Okay, and then on your buildings, you mentioned that you're planning maybe some hydroponics and then some else. So are you bringing in the soil? Because the Wyeth Holdings covenant specifically states no animal or people measures to feed animals or people. You can't use the dirt, you can't dig underground, there's nothing that can sustain people on that land.
Yeah, so we're not gonna dig. And a lot of that area is already capped with cement already, so we're not gonna dig. So you're gonna build above it. You can use water with hydroponics as much as you can. If you wanna do a raised bed, you can do a raised bed. I think those are all allowed, but we would conform to whatever the code is. If the code says you can do something, you can do it. If not, you'll find other technologies to do it. Look, I mean, we've come to a point where the technology is available now to do a lot of things, right? So all we're trying to do is to find a solution to a yes that fits the village, the people, and what is permitted by code. And we're trying to find that middle ground to find to a yes. We're not looking to do something that is against policy. We're not looking to, come in and make over promises and under deliver. We don't want to do that. I think what we're trying to do is say, we're trying to find a middle ground that works for everybody, where you've got jobs, you've got the technology, you want to experiment with a lot of things, and unfortunately you have to experiment, and that's the only way to move forward. But we're going to conform to code and what the village supports.
Time's up. Do you have, I'm giving you extra 30 seconds because I gave the previous person 30 seconds to close.
Okay.
Are you gonna open for public comment at the end?
I'm gonna give my seat up to Mr. Harry.
Okay. Do you have any other closing comments for 30 seconds, or are you all set?
No.
Thank you.
Speak again. Thanks.
Okay. Dave Kreutz.
Dave Kreutz, for Maple, ERS. First of all, I'd like to address the ERS. I mean, I hear ERS a lot. ERS, we own the building, right? Our job that we've taken on is to try to attract business to the village. We don't operate a business. We're trying to get businesses to come to the village. We started the business, we started out with a data center. That was intentional. Data centers cluster. They bring other businesses into the area once a data center is established. Part of that is the reason Harry's here, okay? So that's what we do. We clear up a misconception. Harry was not the solar manufacturer that we brought in a year ago. That was a Canadian manufacturer. We were down to the final three, Rouses Point. Over $100 million in investment, hundreds of jobs. They witnessed the board meeting. Trustee Menard had a meltdown. We get a phone call the next Monday. They're out. They're not interested in Rouses Point. If you'd like to call our president, Chris Wilson, he'll share with you the phone call that he had with the president of the solar company. It's not Harry. I want to address, these are not allegations about Trustee Pelkey. This was a settled matter. The investigation was concluded, and it was determined that the trustee violated the workplace violence policy by verbally and emotionally abusing the village administrator. This isn't maybe, this happened. It's happened before. And I think that the policy of this village needs to be a zero tolerance policy, zero tolerance policy against verbally and emotionally abusing a fellow employee. I too call for Trustee Pelkey to resign. I have another letter here. It says from the law firm that did the investigation. I have provided my report and recommendations to the Board of Trustees. Mr. Mayor, did you get the report? You did not. Trustee Arnaud, did you get the report?
Yep,
Why did the mayor not get the report?
but it said confidential on it. And when it says confidential, I don't give it to nobody.
You hid the report to protect Trustee Pelkey.
No, I didn't do the report. A private concern did the report.
I'm calling on you to resign for hiding the report on trustees abuse.
Whatever.
That's wrong. And it's not the first time it's happened.
Your opinion.
It's not my opinion, it's the opinion of the village. The village has spoken out on this. Thank you.
Thank you for not taking 5 minutes. Is Harry back in? Harry, you've got 5 minutes.
Sure. And again, I think I want to take this time to request the village to reply via the code enforcement officer with an official response on whether the permits and applications that we put in back in late November, early December, or early to mid-December, whether that, if they are going to be rejected, which I believe was the path that we heard from the lawyers that in current form it is going to get rejected. So we would like to get the rejection officially from the code enforcement officer to follow a process, because right now you're not following process. Usually you apply to the code enforcement officer, legal does not get involved. And you know, we know this is not process. We know that the town is not in current form, the board is not supportive of any of these economic decisions. We understand that. But whatever it is, I think the rejection should come from the code enforcement officer, and accordingly we will then act accordingly. But at the moment, I would like to bring it on record and tell you that whatever you guys have done, the board has done, this is not right, this is not the process, this is not the way it's supposed to operate. If I apply for a permit, the code enforcement officer should reply back to it saying, you know, this is not right and he should reject it or give us advice. But the fact that it's gone twice to your legal counsel and legal counsel is responding, this is not form, and the last time I heard that none of the board even knew that the legal response was done. So I would like to request a rejection officially from the code enforcement officer, which should be the process. And I know you guys have deviated from that process. Secondly, I think I want to state to a number of people who have made comments here is, you know, we've been upfront. We've told you guys what we want to do in this town, and I think that we want to, you know, invest in this town for a number of reasons, including providing employment to people, employment to the younger generation of people who are here, who also deserve an opportunity to work in this town. And that's something we've done, and we have also given a home to a number of veterans who were hired, and we've given them a home to come and work for in a company that we care for. And we're doing the same. So I think we've, in full disclosure, I think we've told you that, you know, this is our plan. We've given our plan to the village administrator. I believe we have our plan. And in normal circumstances, and again, this is, I've never seen this before, but I guess it's always a first. So we would like, you know, an official rejection. And upon that rejection, we'll take the necessary actions to either refile or re-permit. But we would like to request that you guys follow the process and afford us process, right? Which has not been done. And all we're trying to do is to help the economic situation in this town. We understand it, and there's an opportunity for both sides, and there's a, you know, there's a really good opportunity. It's early 2022. Things could still mend itself, but let's follow a process. And I will tell you, it's not fair. Whatever's been done is not fair. And I'm finding out I'm not the only guy that it's happened to, and there's other people in town that have also faced the same situation.
Can I ask you a question too, because there's a minute, 20 seconds?
Sure, yeah.
The last time you were here to talk about how much power you wanted to use,
Yeah.
it was like around 22, 25, or?
Well, I mean, we put a joint presentation in as a whole unit for the whole piece, and we took the liberty of our portion and their portion all together. And I think we have told you in the last meeting that we don't want, given that the town had, you know, concerns about the entire power being used by that one site, we did say let's stop at 14. So let's find the middle ground and stop at 14, so that collectively there's only 14 megawatts, which would be lower than the peak of what Pfizer used. So that allows and gives plenty of cushion and room for the town for other expansion or whatever else may come in the future, or if the demand in the town goes up, you have enough power to adjust. And if we put up a solar farm on site, we would also reduce that consumption by at least 1.5 to 2 megawatts in the winter, it'll get reduced. So it solves everybody's equation and concerns. So what we proposed was capping at 14, and if we had a solar farm inside, the consumption would go down under 14, and you still have the capacity that is left. In the winter, I think the town is consuming 8 or 9. You've got 27 megawatts there. I think you're still under threshold, and you still have the cushion to allow for other expansion in the future.
And your solar farm is there to offset your power use. So
Correct.
you'd be limiting yourself to like 14, but if your solar farm produces 2 or 3, you're down to 12 or 11.
Correct. So it's on-site generation, and it helps us consume less power. It's a sustainable model, so, it's just like LEED building, LEED Platinum, LEED whatever. Now there are sustainability models going on, and people want to see that their businesses are sustainable. So if we can show we've consumed, our own power, and X amount of power came from our own generation, it's not a bad thing.
Thank you.
Which also has been rejected, by the way, by your lawyer, by the legal firm.
Melina Tamer?
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is
Yeah, go on. I skipped the rules. We'll get back to it.
my name is Melina Tamer. I'm from the Clinton County Health Department. So first of all, thank you for letting me steal some of your time tonight. You obviously have a lot of big issues to discuss, so I'll try to keep it very brief. I would love to just give an overview of the grant opportunity that the Health Department has right now, and just kind of dive a little bit into the concept plan that was put together for the Village of Rouses Point to utilize those grant funds. So an overview of the grant, it's called Roots to Better Health. It's a CBPH New York State Health Foundation grant. It is used to implement complete streets policies, plans, and practices to increase opportunities to walk, bike, and roll to everyday destinations. So essentially, the money is to be used to safely connect people from point A to point B via walking, biking, or rolling. So the health department is administering this grant because of some pretty depressing statistics that I'm going to shoot out there, just because I feel like statistics give a really good picture of the current health situation in the county. Right now, 81% of adults don't meet physical activity guidelines. 15% of residents report poor mental health. 1 in 3 school-age students are overweight. 3 out of 4 adults are overweight or obese. So that is the whole driver behind this grant. It's to increase access to physical activity opportunities via Complete Streets. So a Complete Streets concept has been around for over a decade now. Essentially, it's just like it sounds. It's a street that's complete. So instead of just accommodating vehicle traffic, it also accommodates pedestrians. So there's active sidewalks, there's dedicated bike lanes, there's safe crosswalks. And the Village of Rouses Point has a really great network of sidewalks and bike lanes, low volume streets, low speed streets. I believe it's 30 throughout the whole village. So you guys have the bones for a walkable community. And this grant funding is essentially going to build upon that, to try and get people out into the streets more walking and biking instead of taking their cars. So I met with Susan a few months ago. We did a walk audit around the village. We took notes. I also met with Chris and other leaders in the town of Champlain and the village of Champlain because we talked about the Northern Tier Rec Trail as being a focus for some of these grant funds. As you all know, that trail was built back in 2017 as a Safe Routes to School trail. And our goal with this money is to try to increase usage of that. Right now, kids are using it, adults are using it, people are using it, but not enough. So some of this money is being proposed to put together a trail map system with a trailhead map in the village of Champlain on Elm Street. Wayfinding, which is essentially signage along the trail telling people, hey, it's only 1 mile to the grocery store, it's 2 miles to the park, it's 3 miles to the school. Essentially, it's promotion, and that will be all the way along the trail throughout the village of Champlain, the town of Champlain, and some in the village of Rouses Point. We've also identified some traffic delineators along Prospect Avenue where the trail meets Prospect. and also some pedestrian and bike road markings along Prospect Avenue along the trail to try to make it a little bit more comfortable, because we have had some comments that people are a little bit nervous walking and biking along Prospect because it is 55 miles an hour there. So getting into the Village of Rouses Point specific projects, we've identified, again, like I said, some improvements to the Northern Tier Rec Trail, which would include a trail map I'm proposing at Rouse Park. So the trail was originally built to go north up to Pratt Street and then end at this rec center. But I'm proposing that we just shoot the trail straight down Chapman, all the way to Route 9, put the trail map right in Rouse Park, put those sharrows on the road on Chapman. It's a straight shot from the Village of Rouses Point all the way to Champlain. You're gonna get more traffic that way, instead of trying to tell people, go up this road, take a right on Pratt, go to the rec center. And plus I feel like the trailhead map would get lost out here because you do have that Empire State Trail trailhead. So that would be one of the key projects for Complete Streets. In addition, we've also identified, let me see here, a couple of other really cool projects. So one of them is a Bike to School Boulevard. So you have an elementary school right in the middle of your downtown, and unfortunately not a lot of kids are walking to biking to school anymore. It used to be a norm back when I was a kid. I know the city of Plattsburgh doesn't have a bus system. A lot of kids walk to school there, so there's no reason the elementary school kids couldn't walk to school here. Like I said, your streets are low traffic, low volume. And one of the projects that we're proposing is to add some really cool bicycle boulevard signs that essentially would be pedestrian signage for kids to kind of direct them to school via a path. We're proposing a pretty simple route starting over near Carrier Way, coming up Priscilla Lane, and then over to Maple Street to the school from the south, and then from the north coming from Pratt Street all the way down Maple. So just adding some of those signs to the light posts, just making it feel a little bit more safer and like it's a route to school for kids. So that's one of the projects. Another one is a creative crosswalk at the school. I'm sure you guys have seen them before, but there's basically artistic crosswalks, street murals they're also called. So this calls attention to the crosswalk in a way that is more apparent than just your typical white striping, plus it's a placemaking opportunity. So we were hoping that the NCCS students could possibly jump in, help us design the crosswalk, get involved. This grant can pay for all of the materials to do that.
Would the decorative type crossing interfere with any New York State DOT regulations?
So, good question. The DOT does not recognize these as crossings, but because we're proposing it on Maple Street, that is not a New York State route, and you are able to do that within the village. And I looked into guidance from the Federal Highway Administration and the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and they do talk to creative crosswalks, and they just recommend that the art stay within the white boundary lines. So we would still keep those white boundary lines on the outside to mark the crosswalk, and on the interior we would do all of the artistic stuff. So it would still be a legal crosswalk, but the DOT does not support that. So we couldn't do this on a state route. And one of the last projects identified to utilize the grant funding is this really cool wayfinding program called Walk Your City. So I haven't actually implemented a program like this before, but it's a very simple wayfinding system. It's supposed to be temporary. So it's signage on these like heavy-duty plastic signs, similar to like a campaign sign. You put them on your light posts, and it basically says it's a 4-minute walk to the grocery store, or performing arts centers a mile away. So again, it's promotion. It's promoting people to go and walk. And to let them know, like, hey, I don't need to hop in my car. I can just walk to the library. It'll only take me a minute. These signs are very, very cheap. It's a small-scale project. I'm proposing between 20 and 25 of them spread out throughout the village, directing people to those destinations. I know the village received some grant funding for a smart growth plan, and I'm assuming that within that plan, you guys will identify branding, marketing, wayfinding for the village. So this is sort of a temporary installment of that bigger wayfinding system. We can put them, down near the marinas to try to direct people from there into your downtown. So it can double as an economic driver as well. And you'll be able to see where people are coming from and where they want to go and adjust from there. Again, like I said, it's temporary. I'd assume these signs probably only last a year or so. But you'll be able to see again where your traffic is flowing to and from, and where they're most useful so that when you do your permanent wayfinding system, eventually you'll know where to put it.
It was like a prototype wayfinding.
Exactly, exactly.
Before the main one. Is there a way that history could be tied into the signs so they explain the history of a given location as a, like kind of educational walk as well?
Possibly, yes. So as part of the Northern Tier Rec Trail wayfinding system, we've identified an opportunity to add an optional heritage sign to the post. I don't know if you guys have this picture or not. But there's a small sign that we could add to the post to highlight any historic sites within the town of Champlain, Village, Rouses Point, etc. And you can always change these out and switch them around, etc. So it's a really cool opportunity, and we actually do have grant funding that we could use for this. I should have mentioned first that this grant has no match. So the only thing we're asking from the Village of Rouses Point is labor. So you guys would have to install all of these materials, and then obviously maintenance after the fact. You'd be required to maintain any new signage that we put up, etc.
But the grant itself will pay for all the signs?
The grant itself will pay for all of it, except for labor.
There's no monetary outlay, we
There
just
is
have
not.
to provide the labor to do
Yep.
it.
It's a commitment from you towards complete streets and creating a more walkable community.
Could those signs be installed on a volunteer basis, by volunteers?
Absolutely, yeah. No, there won't be any labor costs associated with the Walk Your City signs, and they're fairly cheap. So I would assume that we would put together maybe like a community work day and reach out to the community, have everyone come up and just help us put them up. But like I said, there's only 20 or 25 of them, so I'm sure your Department of Public Works could help out.
Yeah. And you mentioned there's a separate grant for the history kind of idea?
There is. So I reached out to the Clinton County historian, and she has a pot of money to be used for interpretive signage anywhere in the county. So if we identify a number of signs, I'm sure that we could tap into that grant as well.
Okay.
Now, would you put some of these signs down at the marinas and stuff?
Absolutely. I have a preliminary map here where I've identified key locations for the signage, but we can absolutely walk around and pick the best locations for them. It's really up to you where you think your traffic is coming from and going to.
I like the history of the educational part too.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot that happens with the railways around here. And there's a building at the T intersection with Champlain Street and Lake Street that used to be part of the ferry system.
So another cool opportunity we might be able to have with this grant funding and marrying it with the county historian funding is developing a heritage trail. I've been looking into that in a number of communities because we do have all these great historic resources, and I think if you developed a heritage trail, again, you're creating those walking loops for people to get out and utilize. So that's another opportunity.
It's a great way for people to come out and learn the history of this place.
Absolutely. So our goal with this grant funds is to finalize all the projects, identify all the materials that we need, order those, and then install by May. So we have to spend this money by the end of May.
End of May.
That's our timeline.
That's a pretty quick timeline.
It is a quick timeline, but we're
May
pretty
of
far
this
down the
year?
road. We have our concept plan done. I've met with Chris, and now this meeting, you guys will hopefully be able to prioritize those projects that are outlined in the plan, and then we can go from there with ordering materials and then figure out a day to install everything in the spring.
Okay. How much will these signs cost? Like, what's the budget?
It's a good question. So we are limiting our budget to $8,000. So we'll try to keep it under that. That does not include the historic signs. Like I said, that's a different pot of
That's a
money.
different grant.
Yep.
And it's gotta be done by May. Yeah, it's pretty quick. How soon can we have the signs done?
I don't know. I'd have to look into that. Because some of these signs are custom, I believe the Walk Your City signs will be very fast. You do everything online. So you type in your destinations and all of the text you do right online, and they ship them out to you. So I think that would be pretty quick, a couple weeks turnaround. But the custom signs for the Bicycle Boulevard, those we'd have to order from a sign maker, and I don't know the turnaround.
We have a local sign maker. that
You
comes
do?
to the
Perfect.
village. It
Yeah.
does all our signs.
Department of Public Works, whoever they use,
Yeah.
if you guys
Yeah,
get deals
good.
through them, let's use them.
Yep, we purchase all our signs locally.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
You guys have any questions for me?
So is there gonna be a list of these signs of what we're responsible to get and the ones that you're gonna provide?
Yep, absolutely. So what I'll do next is put together sort of a spreadsheet, I guess, of all the different materials that we're going to need, and then we'll
Okay.
figure out who's going to source it
Who's
from
gonna,
here. Yep,
okay, perfect,
and I'll put together a budget associated with those items as well.
perfect. Thank you.
Because we'll have to approve that budget and get that set up. That was really good.
All right, thank you, everyone.
What would we need to do to get the history part of the grant? Because that hasn't been applied for, I'm assuming.
So you wouldn't have to do anything.
You wouldn't have to do
You
anything.
wouldn't have to do anything. That'll be on my end, just coordinating with the Clinton County historian.
Okay, good. Is that everything you have?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I skipped two things to let Manila Tamer go first, so she could leave if she wished, doesn't much want to stay.
Thank you.
Minutes of January 3rd. Any questions or changes to the minutes?
Make a motion to approve minutes as written.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Bills. Any questions or additions to the bills? Any additions to the bills, Arsen?
We have two additions. The first one is New York Municipal Power Agency, the amount of $72,873.28. That's for our December bill. We also have the New York Power Authority, the amount of $85,070.29. That is also for the month of December. And I just want to point out that all this talk about demand and everything, our demand for the month of December was 12,353 kW. That was December 20th at 9 a.m. We also, on page 6, I believe it is, the Gillies Auto Truck and Marine bill should read 20910 instead of the amount listed on that bill. It's $167 cheaper.
Which page is that on?
I believe it's page 6. Page 6.
Which was that bill again?
The Gillies Auto Truck and Marine should read 20910 instead of 37867.
I make a motion, we pay the bills as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence on power usage with the ERS. Oh, that's a long thing to read. That's enough. I'm not sure how to handle an email exchange.
Well, if I can interject, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Andrew Stolper from the ERS. I'm part of that email exchange that's there. Your office had made recommendations, which ERS is just wanting more information on, but it seemed on a preliminary stage that we would be agreeable to the recommendations that were made by your office. After that point, it's kind of gone silent. Reached out, spoke to even Chris Latchmore today, and he says that he's waiting on approval from the board. According to the email exchange, someone reached out to PLM, gave a recommendation, and supposedly that recommendation is what was sent to me. As Tom would understand it, even though I haven't gotten more in depth into it, it's to spread the power across two different breakers to go from there.
Oh, paralleling the tabs. fine with the modifications, Babe, as long as PLM is fine with the modifications.
We didn't make the recommendations. Your office reached out to ERS. In response, I asked for clarification on your initial email saying that there was some sort of risk or a safety issue. I asked for clarification. This was the clarification I got with recommendations. Obviously, for safety, we would of course look into it because safety is our first concern. I just needed to know the following steps. I asked them, to please meet me at the substation for just a further explanation. I asked if I could come into your office today, and we're here with no answers.
So you were notified by the village saying that you're coming to capacity on the one feeder that you have.
That's not exactly true. Our feeder line is 1,080. That's done by your own expert, okay? The usage right now is 650. You're completely misstating something right now. We're not even close to our feeder line capacity. The breaker itself is set at a certain level. That's all this is.
Exactly.
There is no risk to any feeder. We're not close to any risk of any feeder line. It's just a breaker. The only thing that will happen here is the breaker will trip.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
So he said, not a problem.
I guess
Let's walk through it and let me understand what you guys want done. If you want it done where it's split across a different breaker, I was agreeable to it. And then it went dead. But there's no risk of any feeder line.
I guess the question I have in my mind is what exactly is on that breaker?
That's not even relevant. All it is what's going through, and if it can be spread across another breaker, that's it. That's all we're doing here. Your office reached out to me. I'm trying to work with your office. Then it went silent. That's all I'm trying to do here.
So if there's 800 amps on that breaker right now,
There isn't. Again, there's 600 amps to 650 on the breaker. If that. Your own report from PLM stated it. We're not below the breaker. We never tripped a breaker. We have not hit the limit.
right,
It was merely just a precaution so that the breaker wasn't tripped.
I guess the only question, again, that I'm asking is, what is that amount of power being used for when the permits that you applied for were for office spaces?
First off, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Second off, it's still not relevant to the situation that you reached out to me for. You reached out to me for a safety thing, and I'm trying to work with you. If you're trying to use that to backdoor something else and harass my tenants, that's something different.
We're just advising you that we feel that you're getting close to the end of your breaker.
And
That's all.
that's why I said to your clerk, I would work with them to transfer part of the power to another breaker.
What's the status of the breakers in this transformer? I mean, how many breakers are there? Are the breakers not being used?
Well, that was part of my report that I was gonna be working on.
And I mean, my primary concern is, again, we've hired this electrical consultant to look at the village's systems.
Yeah, to do an overview of the whole village system.
To see where we are. And we started this some time ago. And certainly I think PLM, which is the consultant we hired, should be involved in this process to make sure we're not doing something that's gonna jeopardize anything in the transformer, including power going to ERS's tenants, but you need to have them involved to look at that to make sure that there's not going to be a problem in that transformer. And maybe there's not. I'm not an electrician. That's why we hire them as a consultant to review that to make sure we're getting the right answers.
It seems like in here, PLM has said that the 600 capacity limit is due to the amp capacity of the 500 KCMIL CU taps, and that paralleling the taps effectively double the tap capacity. I don't know if that means that we could double those, parallel those taps, and then reset the breaker to a higher number, but it doesn't seem like,
The breaker is set at the higher number. What the concern is the wires between the breaker and the fiber facility might not be large enough. So if you put more amperage on that line than what it can handle, it's a possibility it might trip out. And if it trips out, where are we?
I don't know where you're getting your information from. No one, not even PLM, has said that we are close or even near putting too much load on the feeder lines.
See,
So you keep saying this.
No,
but it's
now let
not
me
an
interrupt
accurate
you for a
statement.
minute.
Did you review, hold on one second, did you review the PLM Excel spreadsheet?
yes, I did.
Okay, so our lines are 1080s.
It was brought to our attention at the last board meeting from our chief line worker that you were getting close
To your capacity.
to your capacity. That come from our chief line worker.
We're getting close, according to your own expert, on the breaker, not the feeder lines. It's two different things. Your own expert has also communicated that the breakers can be turned up, but the recommendation is to split it between the breakers. We don't have a problem with that. In fact, I even said, if it's the substation where this work has to be done, ERS does not have anything against it. We will gladly pay for it. But please set up the proper channels so we can understand the full scope of work. Clearly, the safety is our concern. It then just fell flat with your office.
Well, that's not true. We had a conversation today, and what I indicated.
Joe Rodriguez, oh, sorry.
I was letting Chris go. Was the fact that our correspondence that we had was on the agenda for today's board meeting. It's not a decision that I can make as the administrator. It needs to have the board approval, because there does need to be some modifications. My original email that I sent to you indicated exactly what Brian just mentioned, what our chief line worker indicated, is that you were getting close to exceeding the amount of power for that breaker. And our concern is we didn't want the building to have a brownout. So we sent this to you out of courtesy to let you know we're getting close. You said you wanted more detail. I sent it to chief line worker, Jason. He wasn't sure how to answer it, so he sent it on to Matt over at PLM. Matt answered your question in his format. There was no changes made to it at all. I forwarded that to you. We had conversation where you said you wanted to talk to Jason, and I said, it's not Jason's decision, it needs to be the board's, and it's on the agenda for today. And they've had copies of all these reports in our exchange of emails.
And when we spoke, what did ERS reiterate to you? That safety is our utmost concern.
I'm not denying that at all, but I just wanted
saying,
to get.
and if the recommendation was to split it between the breakers, we would gladly work with the village, and I just want to know the process.
Exactly, but I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, that the office was not silent. It was indicated that it was on the agenda and the board was going to review it to give direction. And it's been definitely on the agenda for a week for this board meeting, and the board has had copies of the exchange of emails for a week.
And
So-
it was your experts that made the recommendation.
I know nothing about electricity, so I'm not authorized to give you any explanation. It needs to be the experts in the field. So that's where that stands. So I just wanted to do some clarifications.
Trustee Rodriguez?
Oh, yeah, my question is, Andrew's letter is talking about an email that was sent on January 4th. But the emails that I got are all from January 10th. Is there any way we can get a copy of the January 4th email so we can like all see everything?
Yeah, I can get.
That way we can all like kind of wrap our heads around what's going on and fully read everything.
Absolutely. And apparently, Dave said that he sent a response back to me that I never got, so we spoke on the phone. Then you forwarded Andrew's email. Remember, because I sent you a follow-up
Hey,
email.
you know what, this is simple, let's work it out.
That's
That's what we've been trying to do ever since we've been
Absolutely,
here.
absolutely. But I'm just
Work it
saying
out.
for the timeline, I sent follow-up.
Great, we're happy to help.
Thank
We'd
you.
love to help you guys. Let's get some communication
But-
going in the room and let's work it out.
And I'm in agreement, but I did do the follow-ups.
I said, we're not.
So
you're
what
not
we need is the
trial
board
here.
to approve this here.
It seems like PLM has proposed to a way to solve the problem. I make a motion to make any changes that PLM recommends that we solve this problem at their discretion and direction.
All seconds.
All in favor?
I'd like to have a discussion on that.
Okay.
I think we need to look at the big picture. Our legal counsel already is working on some of the issues on the permitting process that was submitted. The permits are not complete. The process isn't cleared yet. So until that's done, I think we need to get all the facts before we start turning on additional breakers. Because if there's a violation or something that's not right, we need to know about it.
You're not turning on additional breakers, you're making it safe what's running now, which is more important.
You can't address the board anymore. I'm speaking. So, in my opinion, in 36 years of working for the village in this electric department, I feel that we need all the information before we go forward on any additional power that's going on out there. We don't actually know what's going on. There's a 3 megawatt load. That's what the line crew chief told us at the last board meeting. What's that? What is that 3 megawatt load doing? Is it supplying lights? Is it supplying servers? What's it supplying? Rumor is that it's supplying servers. If it's supplying servers, we have a local law that was passed by past board members. Dan Letourneau was the mayor. He followed Colin Reed's plan of action, what the city of Plattsburgh did. And I'm sure Kelly knows about it and Melissa knows about it. They're very involved in this stuff with Dan. They had the discussion. And there's a local law, not a moratorium, that says that you cannot have servers. So will you open your doors and let our inspectors in there to see if they're servers or not? It's only fair to the village residents and to us to make a clear and honest decision. That's all I'm asking. And I think this,
You contacted us on a safety issue. We then asked for recommendations. So you're sitting there today and telling me that you want to forego a safety issue which your office reached out for. That's what you're saying now. So I'll tell you what, if it turns into a safety issue and you guys are now holding it up, we will look to hold you responsible for this. Because your own expert has made a recommendation which ERS has said, you know what, we don't have a problem with it, let's work with you, and you're trying to shut it down.
But is it a safety issue?
Your office is the one that said it was a safety issue. We didn't reach out to you.
Is it a safety issue that the village of Rouses Point did, or is it a safety issue that ERS or 2CERSI created by putting servers in the building? You know, rumor goes around, and you know that. All the rumors.
I don't have to answer to rumors.
Right.
Correct?
But
you reached out to me. You reached out to my company, claiming that there was a safety issue. I'm trying to address the safety issue.
The facts are.
Those are the facts.
The facts are, is if you overload the circuit, it's going to trip out the breaker. That's all we're telling you.
Okay, and I asked for a recommendation from your office, which I got.
Let us do an inspection.
You have no right to an inspection. You need to stop harassing my tenants is what you need to do.
Amen.
How do you expect us to enforce and follow laws when
Don't follow any laws.
Have you followed laws?
What law are you
Have you
following?
followed laws?
What process have you followed?
Have you followed laws?
I'm going to put a stop to this part of the argument. Thank you.
What is the process?
I don't want to fight like this.
We're trying to work with your office, but clearly your office wants to shut it down.
I don't think we should be turning any more breakers on until we get a full investigation.
We're not turning breakers on, we're making a breaker safe that you said there might be a problem with. Address the real issue.
So your own office reaches out for this, your own office gives a recommendation,
If somebody-
and you're refusing
it's very-
to
you're
okay the
responsible.
recommendation that your own office put forward.
People are speaking out of turn at the board meeting.
That's enough of this.
This is so
sorry.
unprofessional.
So I guess the motion fails, because it's gonna be 2 to 3.
How do you know that?
Was
The
there roll
motion,
call?
is a motion, and if there's a second,
There's been a
and
second.
if the discussion is complete, then you can have a vote.
Right, you need to do a roll call.
Correct.
Need a roll call vote for this?
I would say yes.
Trustee Arno?
Aye.
Trustee Menard?
No.
Trustee Pelkey?
No,
Trustee Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Thone is aye. I don't want to, I want to keep that thing safe. So the change will be made at PLM's instruction.
So I'll contact Kate tomorrow.
Okay. EMS concerns with Lakeview Avenue and Woodhaven Drive. Okay, here we go. We got a letter from Kelly C. Donahue. I'm writing to I'm writing to request an address review to correct the road and house numbering issue that has been brought to my attention. The changing of a road name is not to be taken lightly and is clear in order to reduce, it is made clear in order to reduce confusion for emergency response and business delivery personnel. The area in question involves houses that are located near Edgewater Drive, Lakeview Avenue, and Woodhaven Drive. Problem is Lakeview Avenue is also similar sounding to Lake Street. So they're worried about confusion over addresses for EMS and delivery drivers, particularly EMS and other emergency crews. So they would like us to change the name to Woodhaven. So that'd just be Woodhaven off of that road. And I'm not sure what the process for that would be.
Gotta go through a public hearing, Tom?
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm in favor of this because it would make it a lot, it certainly reduce the risk of confusion or issues if there's a fire call or ambulance call. It is kind of weird how Lakeview and Woodhaven are related to each other. So it seems like it should just be straight up Woodhaven Drive.
So if the board agrees, a motion can be made and schedule a public hearing on this issue, considering the renaming of that area.
I make a motion that we hold a public hearing to change Lakeview Avenue to Woodhaven Drive.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
There seems to be some other suggestions too. Three Edgewater Drive should actually be addressed to what would be Lakeview Avenue and receive a number 6 Lakeview Avenue. Number 3 would then be made available for a parcel that is unnumbered at this time. Otherwise, the numbering design would need to be changed in the future. 2 and 4 Lakeview Avenue are across from 7-11 Lakeview Avenue. She's also proposing the change to 2 Edgewater Drive to 8 Edgewater Drive and 4 Edgewater Drive to 10 Edgewater Drive. Since these are dealing with house numbers, would this be a second hearing? I make a motion to have a second hearing to address the numbers on the address parcels for these properties.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we should notify the affected residents. Would we do that with a, by sending a notification out to them through the tax bill, or
No.
not through the tax bill, not through like the
They have-
bills for water and sewer?
They just keep a public hearing if they do. We advertise it.
Just advertise it?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll have a posted in bulletin board too.
I'd just like to make sure we've got, that the specific residents would be notified that their address numbers might change. Okay, resolution 2022-03, inspectors of election. Whereas pursuant to Article 15, Section 116 of 1979 State of New York election law, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Rouses Point is charged with adopting a resolution appointing the inspectors of election, appointing a chairperson thereof, and fixing their compensation. Therefore, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Rouses Point does hereby resolve that inspectors of the election shall be Mary Resica, Chief Inspector, Merrill LaFave, Nancy Baker, Elise Briette. The chairperson should be Mary Rescott. The compensation will be fixed at $14 per hour for the election chairperson, $13.50 per hour for the inspectors. The resolution shall take effect immediately. The question of the foregoing is duly put to roll call vote.
I'll correct Joe's last name.
Can you say that again?
I spelled Joe's last name wrong on that, but I'll correct it on the final list.
Oh. I haven't even read it to see that yet. Trustee Arna?
Aye.
Trustee Pelkey?
Aye.
Trustee Nard?
Aye.
Trustee Rodriguez?
Aye.
And Mayor Cohen votes aye. I've got another thing too. Pat Burkett expressed to me that she would like Mike Duffy as the new alternate for the zoning board of appeals. I respect Pat Burkett's recommendation, so I'm appointing Mike Duffy to the remainder of that term. Yeah. You're the other person that applied?
Yeah.
If you do not mind, I would like to keep what you sent me for like a resume for some future position. But I did speak at length with Pat Burkett, and her feeling was that you and Pat have the same background with the border patrol and everything, and she wanted someone with business background.
I did give you a copy, a signed copy of my letter of interest.
Yep.
Did you receive that?
Yes, I was like, what is your name? Maybe I confused it with someone else.
Sharman Bird, 35 Montgomery Street, Rouses Point.
Can I ask a question? Mr. Duffy, is he filling a vacancy on the board?
Yes. There was a resignation that was announced. So we're filling that vacancy.
The other thing,
for
I
the remainder of the term.
believe the village code allows for alternate board members. That's something in the code?
That's what it is.
Yep, that's what it is.
Okay.
An alternate.
But you can also have Ms. Bird serve as another alternate if you want, and you can have multiple alternates if you want, because sometimes you may have more than one person not being able to show up. So you can have more than one alternate board member.
That's a very agreeable option to me, because I do like what you sent me. It's just, Pat Burkett wanted more backgrounds than just border patrol, and that's why she recommended.
Customs, right.
Yep.
Immigration and customs.
Huh?
Immigration and customs is customs and border protection after 9/11.
Yep. But if everybody's good with adding another alternate for an additional one.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, in most towns and villages, they struggle getting people interested and willing to serve on boards, whether it's an alternate or full-time member. So if you have people that are interested in serving as alternates, I would certainly recommend that the board certainly allow those people to serve, even in an alternate position. Because it may also allow them at some point in time, depending what happens with the board going forward, if there's other vacancies, those folks will be somewhat brought up to speed on how the board operates, and they could then slide into those positions.
Much easier.
If appropriate.
Okay, I make a motion to have an additional alternate. Yeah, it is an appointment. How do I pronounce your name?
It's Sharman, S-H-A-R-M-A-N.
Sharman?
Last name is B-I-R-T-Z, with a zebra. Thank you.
I appoint Sherman Burtz to be an additional alternate for the zoning board of appeals as well. Since this is not to fill out a term, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we now have extra alternate members, which would be helpful. Because we do have a hard time finding members for that. There used to be a planning board and a zoning board of appeals, but they've been defined. So this is very convenient. And I didn't know we could do that, so sorry. But that works perfectly. Okay. I've gone through everything. Trustee Arno?
Anything I have is, I'd like to thank the electric department for a good job the other night. and the street department for keeping up the streets in the snowstorms and the sidewalk. And I also talked to Shar Sample about the flag, and they would like to know if, I talked to a few other people, and they suggested that they would like to put the flag downtown on the poles. If they could take and drill a hole in the sidewalk and put a post up with a bracket on the street light and not attached to the street light, the veteran flag.
So they'd have like a separate post next to the street light, or would it be completely
Yeah.
separate?
Completely separate.
Completely separate, its own pole,
But just a bracket to hold the pole and drilled into the sidewalk.
and drilled into the sidewalk.
Because right now she has 70, I think she said 73, I think it was, of the flags. And they're looking at possible, the street that they have right now is Lake Street and Maple Street, and they might have to go to Chapman Street and Champlain Street. They got so many people putting them banners up.
Maple, Chapman, Champlain.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't really need to do it other than Lake Street in the village where we have the smaller lamps.
Right.
If we do the outer Lake Street and Champlain
Yeah, they
Street,
just go on the pole.
they go on the pole.
Okay,
So it'd be only in the village.
so
Yeah,
it'd be only for.
just in the downtown section.
Just in the downtown section, okay.
If that would be recommendation or whatever, or what they would use for a pole, I have no idea, I don't know.
I'm good with it, if the board is good with it. I'd just like to see what kind of pole they're using. So make sure that there isn't gonna be any issues with the pole,
Well, I imagine it'd be a steel pole,
steel pole.
like an EMP or something like that, or whatever, or
Would these
aluminum,
be,
I don't know.
would these be taken down when the flag's not
Well, yeah,
on display? So they'd be coming down in the winter then? Okay. Would you like to make that a motion to approve it?
I'll make that a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else, trustee Arnold?
No, that's all I know.
Trustee Menard?
Nothing for this evening?
Trustee Pelkey?
Yes, I'd like to do an overview on our electric system. As most residents know, I was employed by the Village of Rouses Point for 36 years before I retired in November of 2019. Through the years, Bob Clark, Ben Arnold, Dan McCallum, and myself have been involved in designing, installing, and maintaining the Rouses Point electrical infrastructure. Currently, there are 8 power lines that feed from our substation that go throughout the village. The power feeds are Downtown 1, Downtown 2, North, Center, South 1, South 2, South 3, and Champlain Classics 1. The only line that's not being used is the South 3 feeder. It was installed from our substation. It goes to Champlain Street, ends across from the dentist's office. This line was designed to feed and back up developments like Woodhaven, Mountain View, Smith Street for future use. In addition, there are 6 power line feeders that went to the old Pfizer property. 5 of these feeders were taken out of service. And to this day, only 1 is being used. When designing the power feeds, instead of installing the average size wire and transformers, we felt at this time to install a larger size cable for future growth. The current power feeds are less than 50% capacity. That gives us the village for potential growth. Some examples of the growth through the years. Brent Favreau built Evolution Customs, a repair and specialty shop. The village is able to supply him with service for his building and his equipment. The Bridge Road and Lake Street, the vision of the very large area was a grocery store, the size of Price Chopper or Hannaford's. Can we supply them with their needs? The answer is yes. PowerTex has unused warehouse space. They want to increase the size of their current electric service by 50%. The vacant building where Anakemia Chemical was has been sold. A company is moving in there to bring more jobs to our village. The last building on Lincoln Boulevard, Adirondack Palace, is another business doing very well. The vacant lots on the west side of Lincoln Boulevard has enough power to supply manufacturing jobs. The building where CDC and 3D Dental, I was involved in increasing the service size by 50% so they can add more tenants. The vacant field at the base of the bridge, the vision there was a hotel or a motel. Is there enough power to supply them? Absolutely. Barcones Marina is in the process of doubling the size of their marina. We were able to double the size of his electric service for his project. Lighthouse Point Marina, Mr. Walker has shared his very aggressive plan to rebuild his marina. The electric department is able to provide him with power to supply a 400-volt marina. Lakeside Coffee Commons installed a small electrical service. Was installed for entertainment in their coffee cart, a gathering place for our community. Tom Berlotti converted a residential house into a high-end restaurant. The service size was a residential 200-amp service. Through the ability to upgrade, we were able to supply him with a 600-amp three-phase commercial service. This supplies all his commercial restaurant equipment. The north side of Champlain Street, the empty lots, commercial growth, currently enough power to supply it. The empty building lots, make sure that there's enough power for people to build houses like on Beverly Drive, Ryan Avenue. There was a house built last summer. This summer they're targeted for a very large house to be built up there. It was mentioned at one of our board meetings that the wave of the future is everyone is going to be driving electric cars. So, we're going to have to install car chargers in our homes. I've been involved in installing car chargers. Car chargers use about the same amount of power as a small electric hot water tank. To this day, we can do upgrades to our homes like hot tubs, swimming pools, car chargers, and still have enough power supply. Rouses Point has one power substation. We have a contract in place for 13.7 megawatts of hydropower until the year of 2040. Anything over 13.7 megawatts is called supplemental power. That is bought off the electric grid at a higher price. The most the village ever used at one time was 22 megawatts when Wyeth or Pfizer used half of the village power. They employed at one time 2,000 people that supported the general fund and taxes, our water and our wastewater fund. There are 4 power transformers that supply the village with 22 megawatts of load, still able to maintain our equipment. With the amount of load that we could take one of the transformers out of service if we had a problem for maintenance and still supply the 22 megs. But not for a long time. Wyeth or Pfizer at the time would work with us and slow down their production or their usage to help us get through that trying times. This month of January, we went over the 13.7 hydro allocation and went into supplemental power. The village has not seen this load since 2018. The cost of this is passed on to everybody that pays the bill. 2 CRSI came to one of our meetings and asked for 20 megawatts of power to supply their servers. If you add the 20 megawatts of power to the village 11 megawatts, is going to put us up around 31 megs, an all-time high. At this amount of power, the village could not properly maintain transformers. And if we had a problem with a transformer, we could not take one out of service and supply the demand. In addition, if all the power is used for servers, we cannot supply power to any additional projects, economic growth to the rest of our community. The reason the past board followed Plattsburgh's study and plan on high-density loads is to make a local law to protect our power system and our residents. Colin Reed, the former mayor of Plattsburgh and a SUNY Plattsburgh professor on economics and finances, did an interview with CNBC called The Exchange on server farms. Everyone should take the time to watch this interview. It would answer a lot of your questions. I'm always available. I'm retired. I have time to meet with anyone to talk about electric infrastructure in Rouses Point. I've been here all my life. I worked for the village for 36 years. I know how this system works. Whenever you do any upgrades, you're supposed to get electrical inspection. They make the homeowners do it. They make the commercial businesses do it. Some people think that we don't have to have electrical inspections, which isn't fair. There's a permitting process that should be done. I just ask for it to be followed. Because this affects everybody in this village. I mean, you know, we can't get a clear answer. Is there servers or is there not? There's a local law that's been established by past boards, not by me. I'm not the bad person. I'm trying to withhold the law. It says there is no servers on our system. Cannot get a clear answer from nobody. I don't understand why. We have a code officer. He should be walking through that building whenever he wants. We have an attorney that can't even get the answers. So if we're going to be open, the lines of communication, let's do it. These are the facts that I just put out to you people. And the residents are watching. And everybody knows I'm here for the residents and I protect this electric company. That's all I have. Next thing, I need an executive session to discuss an employee.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I also need an electrical or another executive session to discuss possible litigation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Trustee Rodriguez?
First, I'd like to thank the employees by the names that I got who went out to the electric department, helping the transformers, Jason, Jared, Dan, and Heath. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry, but thanks for going out there in that cold weather and helping people get their power back on. And also, I'd like to caveat on Trustee Arno and thanking the Public Works for going out there and cleaning up all the sidewalks and everybody and everything during the snowstorm. Other than that, that's all I have.
I forgot to ask if there was any correspondence to read out loud.
There are. Before I get to that, first of all, what I'd like to do is, I would like to thank Patty, John, Jared, Keith, and Benny for their assistance while we handed out the COVID test kits here at the Civic Center that took place. We received approximately 90 test kits, and just to let everybody know they were gone in approximately 15 to 20 minutes. And I want to thank everybody for their cooperation and understanding that when they came, that they understood that we didn't have any left. It was unbelievable for the turnout, but also at this point in time, I want to let everybody know that the federal government now has their website up and running, and everybody can go to COVID test, so that's COVID test, TESTS.gov, and you can register and receive free test kits through the federal government. So that's some information that I want to share with everybody. So if anybody wants them, that's available. Also, at this point in time, I received an email that I would like to read to the board and to everybody that's present here. This email is from Raymond Wyman, and it's a letter to the board. It says, Mr. Mayor, trustees, and citizens, in light of the recent revelations that found workplace violence violations by Trustee Pelkey and covering up these violations by Trustee Arnold, I submit to you
requesting immediate resignation from trustee Pelkey and trustee Arnold. There are names of 16 Rouses Point citizens who voluntarily asked to include their names in the calling for this resignation of trustee Pelkey and trustee Arnold. However, I have not heard from many others who would like to have their names included, but their fear of retaliation, so they did not wish to have their names included. Their fear of retaliation from an elected official. They fear retaliation from someone whom is supposed to serve those that elected them and placed their trust in them. These trustees are not employees of the village in some sort of immediate supervisory capacity. They are elected. Sure, they do the hiring and firing, but this is not necessary for them to oversee the day-to-day activities of the village employees. This is why there are department heads. Let it be known that many village employees have worked in fear of these two trustees and are afraid to speak out for fear of losing their jobs. I also have accounts from many former employees of the village expressing that they left employment of their village so that they could no longer stand the harassment and bullying of these two trustees. How many times has legal action already been taken against these particular individuals and has not been made public? These two put the village in even further financial peril. Citizens of a small village and employees should not fear to speak out against their elected officials without the fear of retaliation. Therefore, we undersigned outraged citizens of Rouses Point add our names to this letter demanding the immediate resignation of trustee Brian Pelkey and Benjamin Arnold for their unacceptable workplace behaviors. We recently learned the facts surrounding trustees Pelkey bullying and harassment of a former village administrator and trustee Arnold's subsequent retaliation against her when the results of the independent investigation were revealed to the board. Since this has been relevant, many other employees have come forward to say that they too have been harassed. Bullying and harassment is never accepted in a situation where retaliation of any kind harms a victim, make bullying easier of all for us unsafe. As their name implies, a trustee's position requires that trustee of the village residents. Through their own actions, we do not have the history of Pelkey and Arnold. Given the facts relevant by the investigation, the legal liability of the village, and the damage of the moral fiber of the village, we cannot tolerate another day with trustee Pelkey and Arnold in office. We are forced to ask that trustee Brian Pelkey and Benjamin Arnold to put any sense of service and loyalty to the village ahead of their own interest and resign them for their seats immediately. For respectfully consideration, there's names listed on here. I'm not going to read the names because I'm not sure of the authenticity of their names, but that's the content of the letter.
Is that all the correspondence?
That's all that I have at this time.
Other reports?
It's that time of the year. I'm reminding everybody to put their budget sheets in because I have not heard anything from the budget officer, so I just want to remind everybody to get their budget sheets in so we get the budget going.
Who is the budget officer?
The mayor.
Oh, good, okay.
I haven't heard from anything from anybody either.
But you're supposed to take the initiative on it. You're supposed to take the initiative.
I'll get a hold of everybody. Opening the meeting back to the public. Ray Wayman.
Ray Wayman from 14 Priscilla Lane. So first of all, I just want to clear up that on March 4th of last year, there was a meeting with ERS. And in that meeting, ERS said we lost a major company, $145 million investment, a couple hundred jobs. They watched a board meeting, and they said, no way. So that meeting was reported in the Sun Community News, and I brought this to the attention of the village administrator, and he called it fake news. It didn't happen. But I verified, and ERS will verify that that actually happened. Sun Community News doesn't put out fake news. Maybe Fox News does or CNN, but I don't think Sun Community News put out fake news. So I just want to clarify that that actually happened. So I just have some points here, and I'm just going to read them, and you can answer them later at another board meeting. You can call me and talk to me and answer them, or send me an email, or whatever you want to do. I'm just wondering if 2 CSR is still working, or did they get shut down totally? I heard their power got turned off, or something, I don't know, rumors were on the board. And if they did get shut down, did the board make the decision, or who made the decision, or what happened with that? I'm kind of interested in that.
You don't know anything about any power that got shut off to CSR.
So that's just rumor around?
That's fake news.
Okay, fine,
Okay.
Just need clarification. I've heard both sides, happen, it didn't happen,
Social media.
so I don't know.
Social media, right?
So that's why I'm here to ask.
And I'm here to answer.
All right, very well. So, you talk about server farms over and over again. And in that same meeting of March 4th, you had a conversation with the village council, and he said the village moratorium applied to data mining and cryptocurrency. So if they are not doing data mining or cryptocurrency, then it's okay to have a server farm. So when you talk with Associated, you might want to read that, look at that March 4th
You have a copy?
meeting.
Do you have a copy of the local law? It's not a moratorium, it's a local law.
Well, I can get that as well, but I'm just going by that meeting, what your council said, okay?
Right.
So I was talking about the law, I was talking about the moratorium.
There's no moratorium. It's a
But
law.
but the law is 3 servers, so are you gonna come shut down my business because I have like 6 computers in my house?
Is that considered a high density load?
I don't think so.
There you go. So you're not shut down.
Whatever, great, fantastic.
Yeah.
The local law speaks for itself.
Right.
Okay. So, I just wanted to bring that up, okay. So, you talk about the power, right?
Yes.
So, we have lots of power, but we don't have enough power.
We're limited.
We have lots of power for growth, but we don't have enough power for growth that I don't want in the village.
Like,
So are we only limited in the village to X number of power? Let's say 1,000 small businesses open and they each ran some power for fixing their cars or whatever they do, right?
right.
So once the power is used up, oh, no more business in the village? Is that it?
See, Mr. Wayman,
We can't build
if you
another
have
line?
if you have 1,000 little businesses that open up in the village, you're gonna have 1,000 people working. And then the
Perhaps.
power authority will give us more power, more allotment, because we have jobs. That's what
Okay.
Mrs. Reed said in her thing, that Wyeth wanted to expand, but they couldn't get the jobs, so they couldn't get more power.
Okay, but
That's how we get power, is by
Okay.
creating jobs.
fine, but let's look at this. There's a vacant, barren wasteland over there in the middle of our village. The days of past employers, I'm trying to get away from saying Pfizer or Wyeth. Past employers, because we gotta move forward, right?
Exactly.
So let's call it Maple Street or something. Let's move forward
Yep.
from them that abandoned us, okay? So if you have, work jobs over there, some work over there, but let's face it, some manufacturing company isn't gonna come here and create 1,000 well-paying jobs like former companies may have. That's not today's environment. And besides, we already blew it for one company. But anyway, so bottom line is, if there's not 50 jobs per X watts, then we can't have business.
You have to have 50 jobs for every half a megawatt of power. That's how you petition the power authority.
And so the board thinks that we're gonna get some companies to come in here and develop that area
Well,
and have 1,000 jobs, 500 jobs? I
No,
don't
it
think
doesn't,
so.
it doesn't happen overnight, but just the examples that I gave you is economic growth through our village that people don't realize or recognize. I mean, with this COVID problem that we're having, everybody, these Canadian companies now, their hands are so tied in Canada. You know, I talked to Matt at CDC and I talked to different people about, well, people coming to our village. And these Canadian outfits want to come down here now because they don't want to have their hands tied like they were in Canada. They want to be able to have a location here in the U.S. Hopefully, ERS reaches out, or they reach out to ERS, and we can put more buildings up there and have more manufacturing. Down to, like I said, Lincoln Boulevard. There's places down there for manufacturing. The Anakim Chemical building was vacant for 1.5 to 2 years. It's sold. There's going to be jobs going in there. I mean, to me, that's growth. I mean, our marinas, I know they're seasonal, but that's a big investment for Mr. Walker and Mr. Mott for what they're doing. And when you bring 400 boats here, and Mr. Mott has 400 boats, you know, at one time there could be 800 people in his village that's going to go to our shops, to our restaurants, to our dollar stores. Correct?
I disagree with that 100%.
Well,
Because before COVID, our marina was full here, boats on the water, you know, we really miss them, we all do. And we miss our Canadian friends. But I don't see those boaters spending a lot of money here in the village. You know, because I don't see the prosperity. Maybe you know, the coffee shop.
they have in the past.
But you know, I
They
don't.
used to go to our liquor store. They go to our small grocery store. I mean,
Ask Mr. Berlotti if the Canadian,
Well, he's a relatively new business, and then poor guy, you know, you
Okay,
know,
ask him
he's
if
some,
the Canadian
he's had some
business
tough times,
is-
you know?
you can
Poor
ask
guy.
Mr. Walker. You know, he's a former marina owner.
We're
He
over
knows.
5 minutes.
He knows what.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
We're over the 5 minutes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Mayor, can you add me to that list? I'll sign in,
Yes.
please.
Just stand up and state your name.
Sure. Am I going out of turn?
No, you're fine.
Steve Biso, 39 Montgomery Street. I had a quick question. Is it Mr. Krutz? Krutz? Can I ask you a quick question?
Close enough.
Sorry if I got your name wrong. I was driving my kids to school the other day, drove down the Academy. I could have sworn I saw an armed security guard. Are your security guards armed? Or was I just seeing? Is that not? They're not? Okay. Thank you for clarifying, sir. Second thing, is there a representative from RP Holdings here?
Yes,
And, sorry, you're with RP Holdings?
correct.
Mr.
Mike.
Mike, last
Miranda.
name? Miranda? Are you mining cryptocurrency?
No, we're running a data center with some server farms. I'm 2ZRSI's biggest customer.
Okay. And then another question, I noticed that you registered RP Holdings with the state of New York for lobbying for marijuana. I was just wondering what the plan was for that.
Yeah, I own multiple sites in New York State, multiple properties and buildings, and we have lots of business ventures going on.
But that's RP Holdings,
RP and
54
Holdings.
Maple Street,
That's the business
Rouses
address.
Point, New York?
Yeah, that's where the business address is, correct.
Okay. So is that what's going in the greenhouses next to the school?
No, that's not the plan for the greenhouse, right?
I'm sorry.
It's a question.
Greenhouses is mine, it has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
So that's my business and I would be a tenant to, it has nothing to do
Yeah,
with
that was just a question.
I understand that.
Not an accusation.
Greenhouses is me, it has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
So if you want to address that, you address it.
I was asking him.
There's
I
a
noticed
bunch of
he
different,
registered with
there's
the
a
state of
bunch
New
of
York.
different companies there, and they have their own things that they're doing. And just because they're all in the same building doesn't mean they're all.
It'd be great if you got like a spreadsheet of what the companies were, especially since we're trying to decide if this is something we want in our community.
Well,
It's all kind of very fuzzy.
I've given all the information to your village administrator about the business plans, the investments, the
Great.
jobs, and I've done all of that. And
So
I've been in
hopefully
full
Chris will share that with us right now, about the breakdown of all the companies. Great. Thank you.
State your name.
Please go ahead.
Melissa McManus, 3 Kavanaugh Drive. Can you all hear me? I'm not accustomed to speaking in a mask. Although I've been in this room many, many, many times where people would have been really glad if I had something across my face and I would stop talking. And there are a lot of people here that have been there for that. I apologize for my dress. I was not planning on being here tonight. And it's interesting that I am because I was actually having a discussion with my daughter a couple of hours ago about what it used to be like when I was growing up. And I'm a 4th generation Rouses Pointer, talking at that point to a 5th generation Rouses Pointer. And you know what I see here tonight is so much of the good of Rouses Point. Rouses Point has always been a good place to have a good discussion, a heated discussion, both sides coming in passionately, caring about the village. That is part of our heritage. However, I think it's really important, from my point of view, Mr. Mayor and Board, to separate the issues that have been raised here tonight. And to separate personnel and board issues from the validity or the safety, and this is all over my head, of electrical system issues. What I will say is, and business issues, this electrical system that may sound abstract to people is so interwoven in our community's history. I'm so proud that my uncle Leo Letourneau in 1960 was the mayor when this community chose, unlike most communities in New York State, to become a municipal electric corporation. And by doing that, ensured that all of us, many people who might not afford to keep a house, own a house, are able to do so because of the electric rates. I moved over here in 2001 when I had my daughter and I wasn't working because we could afford a house here that with the power rates were so much lower. I sat during the ice storm with my dad in 1998 with my daughter, or my son in my arms, when the power was out everywhere and this electrical system kept the power on. And I watched the senior citizens in our community walk in on the 3rd of the month with their electric bills and pay them in cash month after month after month with great pride. And so it may sound like an abstract issue, but it really isn't. And I heard our treasurer, Arsene, classmate of mine, quote a number, and I think it was 12.6. We were at this in January. And it's 14.1 that puts us into
13.7.
Okay, and those numbers sound so abstract, right? But what they mean is, and I'm going way back in my memory, and I apologize again, I'm not an expert, that when we cross that number, then everybody's electric bills get significantly more expensive. And so while we all want growth, and I'm a certified economic developer, guys, this is what I do. I try to bring jobs and investment to the North Country. And we all want that, and we all want this town to move and transition from the old railroad economy and the old, Pfizer economy into the future. But then we have to realize that there's a cost and benefit of everything, right? That needs to be assessed. And I guess I'm here just to ask that be done as a neutral, separate issue in the light of day with cool heads, looking at numbers dispassionately at all the issues, because we all want to raise our next generation and the generations after that. And for a lot of us, that change in cost is that we go from hydro into the surcharge, we used to call it the nuclear surcharge, now supplemental, right?
Yeah.
It's the difference between, take out at CASA or no take out at CASA. But for a lot of other people in this community, it's a lot more than that. And so, again, I'm so thrilled to see the interest. This is Rouses Point. This has always been Rouses Point. I grew up back in the days when elections were celebrated with people driving around in trucks banging pots and pans. And it has always been a community that got out and passionately debated the things that people believe were important. But I think we just need to take a step back, and that's my request, and actually dispassionately separate issues and objectively evaluate based upon the facts, the circumstances, and follow process. Because those old processes that our attorney is here to remind us about have served us well for generations, and we cannot go wrong by following them. So thank you all for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Someone else had their hand up?
Mayor
Oh,
Stone,
good.
Ashley Burtz, could you add me to the list as well?
At this point, I'm not actually writing anyone's name down.
Okay.
Just go ahead. No, just normal
Okay.
public session.
So Mayor Thone, I think you were just 2 years below me in school. I have no personal attack or anything against you. I mean, we even had a friendly conversation outside of your home. I think it was in like September, my children were there. We had just finished the loop, we call it the Wyeth Loop. It's like a loop, it's that curve up against the Rouses Point Elementary School. And I was like, so how's it going? I see a lot of like, what's going on over there? I see a lot of people going, a lot of security. I mean, I never saw that with Pfizer, people walked in. I mean, I even lived in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley. I would take my kids to the Google Park. There was this huge park. We could go into the Google Visitor Center, Facebook, same thing. You didn't have that amount of security at Facebook or Google, so I was just saying, geez, I think I called you Jed, well, it was a friendly conversation. What's going on? Are these good guys? And you're like, yeah, well, I think they're pretty good. And I was like, so what about the amount of jobs? Is it gonna be? And you had said to me, yeah, they had overestimated with like 300 to 500 jobs. They're being more honest now, saying about 20 to 30, and honestly, most of that's security. That's what you said. My children were there. I mean, I heard it, and I don't think you're a bad guy. I don't think you're, trying to lie. I hope you're not under pressure of certain things. All I see now and what I hear from the other mothers that have children that go to that school and like to walk around the town. I mean, when Pfizer was there was like stores that people would bring home things like Chef Boyardee, things like that. We would never be scared to walk around there. Now my kids are like, Mom, there's like, what's going on? There's like big fences, there's like cars with their trunks open, what's happening? I'm honestly scared for the village and for the children that want to ride their bikes, maybe from Rouses Point to NCCS if we get that great nature trail. I mean, anyone can go on and search. We're a village, right? We're bringing in, well, this company is here. Any wise person, these guys do their research, the company owners do their research on us, Google anything to find out more information. I'm just kind of speaking on behalf of the young families in the village. Armed security guards are not allowing people in the building. Okay, if they're not armed, that's a lot of security. I mean, it just is. And I'm gonna stop. I'm just gonna say, I feel like there's they're hiding so much stuff in there that if they could let people in and say, look at what we're using all these servers for. I mean, do the math, like cryptocurrency, you need to expand your servers to solve the code, right? You need more and more and more energy. But I'm not saying that's it. I'm just saying people may think the worst. Why don't you show us that it's not? That's all. We want jobs. We want good things in the company, in the
But
village.
the thing, well, the security thing first. Wyeth actually had a lot of security. They just didn't necessarily have a lot of people. I used to drop Mom off at work, and there was a security gate. They had to have an ID tag. It was an automated system. Over there, they don't have an automated system currently, so it's a bunch of security guards. And as Dave said, they're not armed. As far as the jobs thing, early on, I had some conversation with Chris Wilson. He said they're going to have a lot of jobs. And then I saw the thing about with the county for the tax stuff. And Dave at the time said there were going to be fewer jobs. I don't remember the exact number. That was all before Harry came in and gave us that presentation and then expanded on the jobs number. So I do hear different jobs numbers. Before it was like 500. Then there was a meeting with the county where they said it was going to be like 50. And then Harry came in and said his company was going to do about 100. So they went from being overly optimistic to being more conservative for Clinton County, and then being, I'm not sure how exact that is, Harry?
Can I just answer that? So from our view, we looked at our business, and to address your point, we're not involved in any growing of marijuana or CBD. You can look me up online. Never done it, I have no intentions of it.
Thank you for.
In terms of jobs, I think we have predicted over 3 years to get to 100. I think the year one was 34, if I'm right on my presentation. I think we got, we put those numbers down and we've been fully transparent with our business plan. To address your point, as a business owner, right, I understand Google and Nike, and I've lived out in Beaverton. The problem that we have as a business is if you walked into my area and you slipped and you fell, I have to pay for that, or you're going to sue me for that, right? And unfortunately, Google and Amazon have such a high balance sheet that they can write $1 million check or $2 million check, no problem for that. Or they have enough lawyers that they can litigate that. In our cases, if you're a small to medium-sized business or a mid-sized business, we can't afford this litigation. You're better off when somebody's trying to climb over a fence. And I remember driving by the site one day, we had 2 kids trying to come in through the site. And you know what? If they just did something stupid and they jumped in and they fell inside the property, we're liable. Whoever the owner is of the property is liable. So in my plant in Watertown, I'm going to have security because I don't want somebody coming in there, falling and slipping and saying, you didn't shovel the snow properly, or you didn't maintain it properly. So there is a liability issue for businesses in general, and U.S. in general has become very litigious, right? So be aware of that many businesses may opt to have security or whatever it is for their own needs, but a lot of it is driven by litigation. A lot of the decisions are driven by litigation. It's up to the entrepreneur to decide what they want to do with it.
Have the police ever been called to that facility?
That I'm not aware of.
Can anyone speak to that? Can anyone answer if police have been called to your facility, the facility? Can you speak to that? It's a small village. Everyone sees everything.
Again, we're just the owner of the property.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Becky Reed, 50 Rose Avenue. I'm just looking for an update on where we are with the new water plant, if there's been any availability of grants out there to move along with that.
We're still waiting to hear back on the grant. That's where we're at currently.
Okay.
Yep. Hey, just a quick comment I had with the kids. The village, this is kind of a message to the village. The village needs to decide what they want. When we first got here and got the property cleaned, we were approached by a warehouse company that they wanted the entire facility. They wanted to pay us $3 a foot. We turned them down, mostly because that's not what we came here to do. We came here to get people, to try to attract people like here right here. We believe that dynamic businesses are what the village needs, especially for the youth. Now there's a election in March. If you want boxes, you can have boxes, because this is what you'll get is boxes. That's fine with us, right? I think you want more than that. I think you want robotics, not boxes. So I think the village needs to decide what they want. We're happy either way, but I don't think 200,000 square feet full of boxes is really what we're after here. So that's all I got.
Question for Harry. Oh, yeah.
I'm not on the agenda, but my name is John Burris at 35 Montgomery Street. And the only thing I would like to add is that I was a member of the village board many years ago. And we got stuck paying a water tower for a while. And the caveat for the water tower was that Eris was going to stay with us for years and years and years. And they were going to pay all our construction costs. That never came, there was no contract signed. So we ended up getting stuck for the
the million-gallon water tank that we can't really use because we don't need that supply for Wyeth anymore. So if you relate to, I wouldn't be opposed, and I'm sure people in the village would feel more comfortable, is if there was a charge over and above what we normally pay, and we as village residents now don't have to pay the surcharge, and we wanted to give the computer banks or whatever they want to call themselves extra power. If they're in agreement to pay the extra power, and we have to get a new generator, and we have to get a new couple more electricians on board, and they're willing to pay for all that, then I think going above and beyond what we're allocated for, and every resident in the village gets paid the supplemental after we get a bill for it, and they want to pay for it, well then, I don't know if there's an issue. Because I think right now, if they give 50 jobs, or they give 30 jobs, and that's it, as long as the rest of the village isn't getting sucked up and have to pay the extra power, and we can stay here forever and ever, who cares? You know, but it's gotta be government, it's gotta be a contract signed, that's what I would feel. And now we're knowing, okay, so we're going, yes, Brian, can we supply them? I'm sure we can, right?
We can supply what Harry was asking for.
So like you're saying, if there's another group that comes in and they want 1,000 jobs, then guess what? They'll have to pay the supplemental, or maybe we can go to, like you say, get more allocated to us because we got more jobs. But we're going, you can't put the cart before the horse. If you only give us 30 jobs, this is all we're going to get, right? We can't get more power. Like you said, you went to Wyeth, you wanted to get more power for the village, but Wyeth couldn't say that they were going to have another 500 employees, right? So I think if we address both sides, we might come to some kind of an agreement.
I agree with you.
You know, that's all. We as residents are not, we're not attacking you. We don't want to keep these people out having jobs. All we want is to make sure that we, as village residents, don't get hit with this, we're gonna have a bill, right? Arson? Oh, yeah. So, my power's gonna go up, and I haven't even been home for a month. So I don't wanna see that, but I don't mind, you know, when, people wanna have more power, and they wanna pay the supplemental, then, you know, I don't see where that's a problem. But how are you gonna, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that have to go in place. We want people to have jobs.
Conveniently, you did a perfect segue for something I wanted to talk about. Is I've got a story here from WAMC where Plattsburgh rescinded their ban on the cryptocurrency stuff in favor of Rider A to the hydro contract, where we can put all the supplemental charges onto the highest, onto the company that is using it. And Harry's there nodding his head saying, yeah. Because you've mentioned before that you're willing to pay for substation upgrades and new transformers if necessary.
So correct. So let me address both. I think there's a solution here, and I think this is a great segue. You have, your water usage has gone down, and your revenues in the water have gone down, so your charges are going up. Your sewer revenues have gone down, and eventually your sewer charges are going to go up. You've dropped $3 million in revenue on your power sales. You've dropped $3 million from 2009. And eventually, if you don't have us, your power rates are going to go up anyway. It's going to go up because your budgets are already severely down. Now, what we're saying to you is there's a middle ground, and that Rider A is one of them. That's middle ground, and we're looking for the middle ground. I've been saying this now for weeks, saying let's find the middle ground. Perfect. What we're saying to you is, a greenhouse comes in, we consume water, you're going to bill us for water, guess what? Your water revenues are going to go up. Sewer charges are going to go up because there's going to be people there, they're going to be using, so your sewer charges are going to go up. So you've got revenues coming back in. We're not going to be able to hit the revenues that Pfizer hit for you. We just can't, because that was 10, 12 years ago, and those days are gone, and I cannot be held to match and compare with Pfizer, because we're not Pfizer. But those 40 jobs and agri is gonna consume water, and you've got a water tower with plenty of water, we're gonna consume that water, we're gonna pay for that water, your water revenues should go back up again. Power, again, you've got a rider, you can put that rider in and we can negotiate and we can get to a middle ground and everybody is happy. And I'll restate this again. I've been saying to you guys now for a month and a half, 2 months, find that middle ground, whether it's that rider, whatever it is. The whole world has now moved to tech, it's all gone to servers no matter what you do. That's just reality of it. And we can litigate, we can fight, and we can argue about the code that you have or the law that you have, and the law will not stand in court, and I've already spoken to a whole bunch of lawyers. Find that middle ground, let's sit down and have a chat, and find the middle ground for everybody that works. There's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of stuff. Most people here in this room are honorable people with businesses and entrepreneurs who have built it. Everybody's got good intentions. And you know what? Things just happen, it's just life, it just happens. Let's find that middle ground and find a path that makes everybody work. And I'm more than happy to sit down with Chris, if you want to pick a time and schedule a meeting. Let's sit down and have a chat and see what works, and we're more than happy to bridge this conversation to get to that middle ground. That's all we ask for is that middle ground. And thank you for that, because that's a great segue into what we're doing.
Well, you're welcome. What all I'm trying to say is, like, you know, let's not get the cart before the horse. Let's just, you know, we already got somebody that's here, and they've already gone over a supplemental, my understanding. Is that right?
Not yet.
Well, let me put it this way. Our residential charges for the next month are gonna be higher because our supplemental has been reached.
Yes.
Yeah. So
We
why
went over
is
our
that?
13.7 megawatts.
Okay, so what contributed to that particular increase?
The village uses about 11 megawatts. So the additional use that was put out there,
64 meters.
Where does that come from?
I guess you can ask the gentleman in the back seat where the power is going.
So you guys are using the extra supplemental that I'm gonna have to pay for. Is that what you're, is that a fair statement or not?
We haven't been in supplemental since
It's not you guys
2018.
to do that, right? But we don't have a contract in place. So the village residents do not pay for the supplemental. That's all I'm saying.
I agree.
Don't care
And
how
we've got a
much you use.
mechanism
I
to get
don't
one,
care.
so let's do it.
You can use all you want, but don't put it on my electrical bill.
There's concern for the water. If you use the water to either cool down your servers or cool down your greenhouses, I mean, there's things that happen in the Finger Lakes where they're taking water out of the lake now. I hope that we can get a contract that's fair and honest, because I don't want to see that to happen here.
We take water.
That's a real thing. It's
The lake is our source
I
of
think they're
water.
using it to cool, and they're putting it back in the lake.
No,
But that's not
that's
your-
not happening.
No.
Seneca
We-
Lake.
we know
Seneca
don't
Lake
do
is
that.
happening.
Regardless of all that.
It's just
and
the
I
water
don't-
that just circulates in the vitamin.
Regardless of all of that, it's just let's work to get a contract in place where the village residents are protected. Number one, for supplemental use. And for half of us are retired, we can't afford to pay the supplemental. And the other half, probably, I don't know, I want you guys to succeed. I do. But I want me to live in peace and not have to worry about every time, you know, like if you're gonna use whatever you're gonna use, and I don't care what you're doing, but don't put it on my bill. Don't put it on anybody's bill. Put it on your own bill.
Enough time. Dale?
Okay.
Can I, okay. I just have a question for Dave and Andrew. Now, I know Harry has said that he'll sign this rider A.
I didn't
Dave?
sign, please don't.
You said you would go with the
No,
rider A.
again, we have to sit and have a conversation
Okay.
and go through it. I never said I'm gonna sign it, so
Okay.
please don't tell me that.
Okay.
This is where things break down, right?
Okay, so you're agreed
To negotiate.
to negotiate.
I'm agreeing to negotiate to find a middle path. I never said I'm gonna sign that, right? I don't even know what.
Dave and
what
Andrew,
that
are
is.
you guys willing to agree to negotiate this rider A?
We've done nothing but try to work with your village and your board. We would gladly sit down and discuss any electrical usage and billing, but we've had to come up here and done plenty of times. I've come up and I've met with you, Dale, I've met with you before, Mr. Pelkey. We've met with you before to discuss things. You guys are the ones that are shutting down the communication. Let's just get it fair. That's what's happening. We couldn't even get a simple thing of safety easily through tonight. Like, it's just disgusting.
But I didn't hear a yes or no whether
I
you
said
were.
it multiple times. We will gladly sit down with you and discuss it.
Okay.
In the back?
Melissa McManus, 3 Kavanaugh Drive. I'm sorry, you probably can tell right now in mine too.
It is
So I just wanna
9:05,
say-
so I'm gonna give you 3 minutes if you don't mind.
That's fine, I won't even take
I
that
want
long.
to start wrapping this
I
up.
was so encouraged by trustee Bird's, former trustee Bird's comments, and, you know, I think as I listen to this, it's so important as our residents who are all going to open up that envelope and see that higher electric bill, have the confidence in this board that you are fully informed, you are fully aware, and you are looking out after the residents' best interest. And I'm not sure because I was in transit watching on Facebook, but I thought I heard a call for resignation of the board members who have been perhaps the strongest questioners of what's happening with the electric system. And I think it's so important that it not be perceived by all those residents who are opening up their electric bills that any attempt was made to encourage those individuals who have questioned the system and questioned what is happening to resign. And I'm not sure, did I hear that? I wasn't sure.
The only person that hasn't asked to resign is Joe.
I thought, and I couldn't hear where it came from. I know certainly from the residents, I understand that, but I thought I heard a call to resign from other quarters. And of course, as we negotiate, it's so important that everyone come in good faith to the table and that all in the village have confidence in what is being negotiated on their part by their board.
Raymond?
Ray Wayman, 14 Priscilla Lane. Thank you, Mr. Burtz. You're the most sensible person in the room. Like he says, basically, how do we get to yes? There is loggerheads between developers and the board. Is there perhaps a neutral committee that could meet together from the village residents and find out all the facts about everything that's happening and make a recommendation to the board? So that way the loggerhead between the board and the business owners can somewhat be neutralized. So we can get to yes, they get what you want, the board is perceived to have protected the residents of the village, and the village can take off like a rocket instead of being subject to a barren wasteland. What do you think?
I would like to recommend that the board be involved with our PLM engineers, because we really need to lean on them, because unfortunately, some of these board members don't have the experience on the electric system that myself and trustee Arnold have, because we worked in it for years. We know what's
Perhaps
available.
PLM could be a part of the committee, the neutral committee.
Exactly, and that's what we want, that's what we're trying to do. But we have to have people come to the table and tell us what they're doing in there. That's all I ask. Tell me what you're doing.
You want to use a backdoor way to find out what they're doing in a private business. But what I'm saying is, perhaps you shouldn't be on this committee because you're at loggerheads with the business people, okay? So have some neutral, maybe educated village residents, have a committee, study whatever, you know, between the village and what the village wants, maybe take some survey of the villagers by mail or whatever, talk to the companies and, hey, what are you exactly doing, blah, blah, blah. And then that committee could make a recommendation to the board. Because obviously the board is adversarial to the business owners, and if you both dig in your heels, that gets no one anywhere. So perhaps a neutral committee, so that the, I don't want to say hatred, but the already perceived notions are taken out of the equation in, let's call it cooler heads prevail. So an independent committee that's not beholden to the board, or beholden to the companies, can make a recommendation to the board. Hey, look, we've studied this. This is what the villagers want. We work with PLM. We think this is a good idea, or let's leave it a barren wasteland. What do you think?
I would support it.
Same.
Maybe
It's
Mr.
not a bad idea, right?
Maybe
This is a
Mr.
good idea.
We
volunteer.
are always open to sitting down with the board.
It's a good idea.
Always. Like we have from day one since we've taken over the site.
I have a lot of faith in the village board. I have a lot of faith in Mr. Renee. He's been our attorney for many, many years. He's not gonna sell us down the river, and neither is anybody, including the mayor, Mr. Toon, Mayor Toon, Toon, whatever.
Yeah, it's good enough.
I believe that he's acting in good faith and trying to bring jobs to this village. I thoroughly believe in that. He's a young guy, he knows all this stuff about computers, he's got people behind him, obviously he's got a lot of people that back him because he got elected. So I'm not attacking anybody on this board because I've grown up with him. The only one I don't know is Mr. Rodriguez, but hello. And, I hope that you enjoy your term on the board. It can get hot at times, but the bottom line is, we always knew what was going on at Wyatt, more or less, because we all kind of worked there. Everybody did. I worked there as a kid. I mean, but it didn't mean that it didn't pollute our backyard. It didn't mean that it polluted our lake. And we used to have signs all over, but then I remember a couple of doctors saying, what's going on in Rouses Point? Everybody's dying of this and that, cancer. Well, here we are today. We got a new company coming in. I don't know anything about computers. I'm lucky I can turn it on at night, or in the morning, or whatever. I try to get on. I don't like Facebook, you know, I got stock in Facebook, but I don't turn it on. So, but, having said that, I don't know, you know, we need an independent group of people, and I think we have expertise. We got Brian and we got Benny, the mayor, he wants to get involved. People and attorneys, people that can draw up contracts, and people that will look out for the best interest of the village of Rouses Point so it can grow in a reasonable manner. And that people, you know, I take issue with the fact that you guys keep saying you have this multi-million-dollar company, and Dale Menard had a meltdown and they just blew us off. Well, how does a multi-million-dollar company decide that they're gonna look at Rouses Point and run into one guy and run away? If I was that president of the million-dollar company, I'd be coming down here and saying, what can I get out of this place? What are my benefits? Where's the working people? Just like everybody else. And anybody's gonna invest a lot of money, they wanna know what it's like. So, anyway.
Well, thank you for wrapping up quickly. That's about the, because we're running out of time and it's getting to be 9:15.
Well, that's all I have to say.
I hate to ask this. Anybody else? Nobody else?
Thank you all. It's not an easy job. Some of us have sat there. Thank you for being there. We appreciate it. Oh,
Yes, and don't give up. Keep fighting for the village of Rouses Point, everybody. That's what we need right now. Thank you for your service, gentlemen, all of you.
Thank you.
Motion
Mr.
recess?
Well, Mr. Cooper, do you have anything for us today, too?
No, sir.
No?
All been ordered out tonight.
Any other reports that have been missed? Recess. Motion for recess.
Make motion for recess. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I can't say.
executive, I gotta go to work.